Hi, Miranda. How you doing?
Hey Greg, I'm doing good. How about
Glad.
you?
I'm doing just fine. It's Saturday. I don't got too many complaints. I'm sitting down with you, my good friend. You are the leader of the Sand Drytop community in Guild Wars 2. Gosh, I got involved in that a few years ago, and you were doing that even before I was a member. How long have you been doing this for?
Um, yeah, you and your wife are actually. I remember you guys coming for like at least a year before we even joined the guild. So that was cool. I've
Yeah.
got like that weird uncanny memory for names. So I started Sand in July of 2015, but that entire summer I was doing dry top with folks.
Why Drytop?
Um, there's a long story and a short story to that. I'll kind of like try and make it manageable.
Absolutely.
Um, I played Star Wars: The Old Republic before Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 was the game that everyone was like, it's gonna destroy Star Wars. See you guys, and they just like logged out, and then they came back like 2 days later. But I had a friend who was like, "I'm just gonna buy you Guild Wars 2." I was like, "No, no, it's okay. I probably won't play it. No, no, no. I'm gonna buy it." He bought it for me, and I was like, "I don't understand, but okay." And I picked it up. I tried it one night, and then I quit for like a year and a half. Um, and then I sort of had struggles in Swoltor with a guild of mine, a former guild of mine, and I kind of just needed to dip out of that game. I needed to find another place to be. And so I got it stuck in my head. I was like, okay, Heart of Thorns is coming out. I need to get my characters ready. I got to get my engineer ready, my
Right.
guardian ready.
I remember that
So
too.
my
That hype
entire
period for Heart of Thorns was so intense.
dude, it really was. Like I remember it was palpable in the air. It really just
Expansion number one, what could happen? And
I
uh,
know.
and at that time, ArenaNet was doing a lot of like slow reveals. They were doing the elite specialization reveals. It was a very different time for the studio. It feels like,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, it
Can,
really was.
so anyway,
They
continue.
had
Oh, sorry.
no,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
of course. No, it's just my internet. I just realized I can't get the 5G. We've got a router and it's got 5G and the regular, and the Wi-Fi it doesn't even pop up. I'm just like, wow, I see how it is. Um, so my entire point was I'm gonna finish the Amberite weapons collection because at the end of that collection you get an ascended armor chest, and I was like, that's what I need to finish my armor for my character. And that's why I jumped into dry top, and that was back when I had a little more time, and it was like a buildup of several weeks of like T5 really close to T6 getting it. And it never occurred to me to make a guild until someone said something. But like that's how it started. I wanted to complete my collection, and I was like, it's funner when people are involved together, and I just like ran around the map like a chicken with my head cut off. I was hyper as all hell.
That's awesome. So, some random person just made the suggestion, "Hey, make a guild." Is that how it went down?
Yeah. I am still friended with them.
Oh,
I found an old screenshot of theirs of mine. I screenshot everything. I'm obsessed with like having nice screenshots to look through and just, feel happy inside. But yeah, they said, you should consider making a guild. And at the time there was another long-standing guild that had been doing dry top, and I was kind of like, I don't know, like, I don't really want to intrude on them. And I was still in my Soul Tour guild, which meant they had a reputation policy of 100%. You could not be any other guilds, except finally, with some of my pushing too. I was part of that movement. You could be in one other guild in one other game on one ult.
oh
So
boy.
that one ult of mine, yeah,
Oh boy.
um, that one ult of mine finally ended up being I'm going to create my own guild with my one Guild Wars 2 character, which meant I could only ever rep that guild on that one character. So I got around that by always being on her.
Wow, I've never heard of a guild in a game that was restricted to the point of preventing you from playing other games. That sounds very that's so serious.
Their whole thing was that they were very serious about community, and I respect that. I respect trying to foster a community where everyone is, super involved with the goings on of the guild, of the community, of everyone else. But I've been in guilds like that before where it was kind of just for show, and the officers like would slap you if you did it, but the officers themselves are like, I'm, in another guild on another alt. Just kind of like the crazy stuff you hear about, like crazy guild corruption and game drama. Like I've seen it, and
Oh yeah.
I felt that, one of the core issues ended up being, you can't be in any guild but ours. You must always represent us. It builds resentment, and that resentment will just, it lingers for a long time, and then you start seeing it as the issue for everything that
Right.
you have going wrong with the game or the people.
So sand became like an outlet for you at that time?
Yes, very much so. It was um kind of I'm sure everyone's heard me say it at this point, but it was a healing sort of balm in my life, in the sense that I'd come away from another community, some of it my fault, a lot of it not. Um and I felt that I was not worth very much. I didn't think sand would last. Like I kind of created it on a whim, kind of with the little fluttering of hope in my heart, like maybe I can do it. Um, and it gave me a chance to be very peppy and cheerful and happy and excited about something, um, that I hadn't been able to show that side of myself in a long time in SWTOR. Probably well over a year, I was on the defensive with my former guild, where they just kind of got, I was moody. I didn't know who to trust. I basically was in the guild only in name, and I just play with people in other guilds.
Right, right. Now in SWOTOR, I'm a little less familiar with that game. The point of guilds in that game, was it for PvP? Was it for raiding? How did it work?
Well, in SWTOR, I think they've made it a little different now, but you basically, oh, sorry, there's an airplane. Um,
Can't hear it.
you basically join a guild. It's not through the account like it is with Guild Wars 2. It's through every single character you create, which gets really exhausting, but it also
Right,
makes it easier to just be in various guilds and have no one know the difference. Um, but in SWTOR, like a lot of other traditional MMOs, you find a guild for PvP, you find a guild for raiding, you find a guild for roleplay if you want to do that, and that's about all you need. There are not there's world bosses in SWTOR, sure, but I mean you can solo half of them. Like once you hit level, what's, oh my gosh, level cap is 75 now. You can kind of just, there are not large wide scale map metas like there are in Guild Wars 2 at
right.
all.
Yeah, the impression I have of SWOTOR is that over the years, it's kind of gotten away from the cooperative component and focused more on the storytelling that it does. It's
Yes, they've made it very clear that they want to concentrate more on the story.
Yeah, my buddy Will has been playing through. He just finished the Imperial Agent storyline, and he was just starting the Sith Warrior one. He was trying to. Actually, he didn't convince me to jump in. I was like, "Oh, I'll jump in and play with you." When I got it, and I realized, oh right, this game was made a long time ago, and there's a reason I didn't play it the first time. Shows its
Yeah,
age.
it's not for everyone. For me, SWTOR very much is my PvP game, and I really enjoy the story. Um, a lot of folks are kind of like, "Oh, I don't like what they did with Revan," and I'm just like, "Whatever." Like, you know, I don't mind. So, yeah,
What did
it's
they
my
do with
PvP game.
Revan?
It's my,
I
it's not a spoiler. It's been out for freaking ever.
Yeah, I played KOTOR 1 and
So
2, but I have not touched SWOTOR like at all, so I'm totally ignorant of this.
like in SWTOR, there's what's called flashpoints, and those are basically the equivalent of Guild Wars 2 dungeons. And so in one, I think it, I can't remember. It's like Taro 5, maybe? Raya would know. Yes, Raya's childhood. Um, you come across the Jedi Exile, which was like Revan's companion back in the day, and she's like a Force ghost. And so then you find out that Revan had been like captured and like basically like just kept in stasis for several years,
Okay.
several hundred years, I think. And then you like free him, and he's like, oh, and I think he's Jedi again at that point.
So
Yeah.
light, not dark, and that was one of the main components of KOTOR 1 and 2 is you can kind of plot your own path.
Mhm. But then there was an entire expansion called Shadow of Revan, where suddenly he split into two people, like literally, like there's one light Revan, and then there's the dark Revan. So you have to team up with the light Revan to destroy the dark Revan. And like they're both the same person. Just, I forget what happened and what the explanation was. Um, but yeah, a lot of people are not happy with that.
Yeah, sounds like an impossible situation because when you have a game where the point is to kind of customize the character and you take that character and you turn him into an NPC in a new game, it's like that's not the guy I played.
Yeah.
Uh,
And that I think that was kind of the big issue. And I didn't mind it. I mean, the Nightmare Revan fight, the final fight of his major raid was just my god. It was they had such I Nightmare raiding in Star Wars. It's why I don't raid much anymore.
really?
You basically had orbs that you had to fight. And so you had all of you, everyone, all 8 people in the raid had to face the exact right way with their character to face the orb. And it'd be something ridiculous like the guild leader would be like, okay, 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And that was basically you had to quickly move your character that way and remember, north, south, east, west. It's
Oh
awful.
man, I can easily imagine the drama resulting from those raids. Like
Oh, yeah.
3 hours of wiping because one person couldn't
No, for
figure it
real.
out or
Like, that
oh
was, yeah, I was in a guild that was a little too lenient. Like, I didn't feel they were progressing far enough. And then in my Imperial raiding guild, it was just like negative reinforcement where the raid leader was just like, come on, so and so, stop being a fucking idiot. Like, that's what they would say. And I was like, oh my God, like, this hurts me. And I'd kind of just like keep my head down. I was the healer. So, like, I have my parsing data. I can just tell, like, okay, I've got the numbers right. I don't really have to worry about the mechanics too much. I'm gonna just do this. And yeah,
yeah.
I had to hop out. It was too much.
I hear you. So when you were starting Sand, you had a few examples of things you didn't really like when it came to guild leadership. I'm guessing it sounds like you learned from those in order to kind of plot your own course.
I did, but I am guilty of going probably very, very far in the opposite direction.
Uh-huh.
An extreme is never good, especially as a consequence or reaction of something. I don't believe in a reputation policy. I never have. I feel, for those who don't, guild wars too, you rep a guild, and so it shows above their head.
Right.
Um,
And you can be in up
I
to five at a
feel
time. Right.
yes, they'll never change that. Um, so I feel that people who have the chance to choose to integrate on their own terms will likely stick it out longer with the guilds, with the community. They'll feel less pressure to have a certain, okay, sorry, sorry, there was like a car making a squealing sound.
I thought maybe it was a
Um,
cat.
no, yeah, I thought it was like a dog yelping. I was like, oh no. Um, there's less pressure, and people don't need to be repping the guild to talk in guild chat. They don't need to be repping the guild to be in Discord to
Right.
participate in an event. I don't even make event. I've never made tag leaders or those who are helping out during our runs. They don't have to rep us. Like, we've had people from all kinds of guilds who are in Sand, but they're choosing to rep another guild of theirs, and they're our tag, and it's like, yeah, that's cool. You're awesome. That's fine. I, it's great. I'm happy when people rep us, and I'm happy when they're just online enjoying themselves, not
Right.
repping us.
Yeah, I'm a great example of the success of that policy in a way because when I first started joining up with Dry Top, it was because at the time I was playing Guild Wars with my lovely wife, who you know, we're
Mhm.
mutual friends, and I was trying to find a fun open world activity to do with her, and I stumbled into Dry Top one day. I think we were doing the Maudry collection, which is for a piece of Ascended armor, which at the time for us, I think that was our first piece. Um, and I was like, oh wow, this would be great fun. For me, I'm kind of a nerd. I'm kind of a tryhard. I want to do the raids. I want to do PvP. Like that's what I like to do. But my wife likes to have a nice experience that's kind of fun and more social. And what Sand was exactly that. Like the way I think of Dry Top when we came into it, and still whenever I drop in once in a blue moon, it's the same. It's like the most. It's like the best party in Guild Wars, I think. Um, I just love those events, and we have always loved them and cherished them. And from the beginning, because you were lenient about the tagging policy, I was able to still be in my like try hard raid guild, but come in and pop into dry top. And then eventually, when I got tired of them and had Basically a similar experience to kind of what you're describing, where the leadership just didn't do a great job and I got alienated. I eventually made Sand my main tag, and that's still who I rep today.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I think I mentioned earlier, like, I remember you and your wife just flitting around Dry Top pretty consistently. You guys were veterans that I sort of took stock of. There are other veterans that I see constantly on the map today who they're not in sand. They're not in sand, but they show up and they know the drill. And it's just it's nice to have that extra bit of community when you don't have to worry about something like reputation and
Yeah.
repping that guild.
Yeah, and I get the argument for kind of consolidating reputation and having that
Hmm.
requirement. The idea of, this isn't just a guild, this is a home. You can only have one home at a time. So if you're here, that's what you sign up for. But the the difference between a home, in the real world with a family and the home in a game is you can change homes pretty easy in a game.
Yeah,
So you don't have to stick it out. You don't have to figure out communication issues. I mean, like I've been there too. I mean, playing MMOs since WoW Vanilla, I'm just as you do. I have plenty of stories of awful guild leadership, um, and awful guild members too. It's not just a one-way street. So
definitely not.
one of the coolest things Guild Wars did to me was totally new was the fact that you can be in multiple guilds. It was like, wow, what a refreshing thing to be like, yeah, I don't have to just commit to one. I can be like, I can be part of multiple communities, and communities can specialize more as a result. And a community like Sand can form around uh, a map meta for Dry Top as a result. Very neat.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's, I mean, yeah, and it's kind of strange in the sense that like it hit me probably later than it should have. Like just how much of a social butterfly I am when it comes to the internet, especially. Um, in my first MMO, Shia, bad MMO. Well, okay, it was fun at first, and then it was like, hey, let's make everyone pay $3,000 a month just to like have pretty gear to succeed and not die in PvP in one hit. Um,
What is this game?
it
Shia?
Shia, it's I don't know if it's around anymore. They do have private servers, but it was a Korean grind MMO.
Ah,
Um, I got very heavy into the PvP community. And the kind of cool thing is that they separated it into like three different PvP servers. There's levels 1 through 15. Obviously, you want to be 15. Levels 20 through 30, and then levels 1 through whatever the level cap was. And so obviously that was like be the level cap.
hmm.
Um, and I just, the forums were super active. They had what was called a shout box. People instantly talk and, chat with each other. I ended up becoming so involved with that game. I was also what they called a community volunteer, which is, they called a game sage, which is more or less a glorified slave where
Free labor.
you're, yeah, dude, you have no idea. It actually was. Like at one point the game devs were like, "Hey, so we're trying to gather up all the text glitches and errors in our game. Would you like to make a spreadsheet and let us know all of these errors?" And we're like, "Yeah, let's do it." And we're literally doing like work for them for free. And I'm mad that I was a game stage for an entire year. Um, that game just good memories, but it was very much a game of where guilds had monopolies over world bosses that you needed to compete over to have the best gear. And as a
Sure.
result, there were very angry people.
Yeah. And that whole model of MMO, the idea of exclusivity, the idea of kind of a zero sum arrangement where one person getting something means someone else doesn't get it, has kind of really faded in the last 20 years, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm truly kind of embarrassed. I don't have that much experience with MMOs. I stick around so long. I played Shia. I played Disney's Toontown for an entire year. That was a fun game, but you couldn't talk to anyone really. They had
Uh-huh.
preset chat options because they assumed everyone was playing was a kid and like it was all teenagers and adults.
Like
So,
emotes and stuff like that, but no
yeah,
text chat.
really.
Sure.
It was awful. And you had to have like a secret code to give to someone in real life, and they would give you theirs so that you could. input that into the game to prove that you knew each other in real life, and then you could talk for real.
That's a good
It
system
was
though for kids whose
for
parents are
kids,
mediating their
definitely,
play. Yeah.
but there were no
But
kids.
Toontown was fun for adults too. That's what you're saying.
God,
You need an
yes.
after dark server.
Yes, yes, definitely. So there was that, and then I went to Shia, and then I went to Star Wars: The Old Republic, and then I went to Guild Wars 2. I've
Okay.
played four MMOs consistently, and then I jumped into Ion and Fiesta, and Lord of the Rings Online for like one night, and Star Trek Online for like one night. It
Sure.
just,
Yeah,
but
I get
yeah,
that.
Guild Wars 2 definitely is different, where there is no I must fight you over this. Star Wars, like as much as I have Star Wars in my heart, like that game, you are just standing around waiting for something to respawn because someone else just killed.
Right. Right. Yeah, Guild Wars is a unique game in a lot of ways. And um I guess one of the okay, so just to back this up a little bit, one of the things that
Mhm.
you mentioned to me is got to do with what Guild Wars and Sand kind of means to you on a personal level. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Oh, that is such a big, big thing to open. I
As
mean,
much or
yeah,
as
fair
little as
game.
you're cool with.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like so many people know the story, and then yet like the story's always being added to just because it's still happening, it still grows.
Right.
But obviously, I did mention I jumped into it from that former guild, and I actually officially cut ties with that guild when I realized that I was so terrified of them being on the same map with us that I was like, I'm afraid of these people, and it's hindering my ability to run a guild that I really care about. So I when I realized that, I was like, I gotta go. Like you guys are no longer important to me. Sand is. Um, so it was, the former guild of mine, some of it was me projecting my own issues, some of it was on their leadership. I felt like I was not cut out to run a guild. I felt like I was not cut out to even be an officer in a guild or really have anything to do with an organization of players. I felt like I was doomed to fail. And for like the first 2.5 years of Sand, like I would literally every birthday I'd be like, "Wow, guys, like I never thought this would happen." And then finally, people are like, "You got to stop being surprised. This guild's like old enough." And I was like, you're right. I should stop." So I had to make myself stop. Um, it made me feel good to be able to channel that enthusiasm and excitement of mine because I could not do that for so long in elsewhere in another game that I had truly loved so much at one point. And these days, although I mean it was happening back then, but my mom has early onset dementia, so
Yeah.
that's sort of a huge part of my identity now. And like,
You live with her?
yes, I do. I help. Me and my dad are sort of a team, a unit to help, and then of course he hires folks to be there when I'm at school and he's at work.
Uh-huh.
Um, but with
That's
her,
tough.
it's like, yeah, she's kind of like a child. I mean, she's very much like a child in the sense that like she could do something, and like a child, like if they stole your candy and you're just like, "Did you eat the chocolate?" And they're literally chewing it and they're like, "No, I didn't do it." That's my mom.
Hmm.
Um, and
How
she's,
long has this been going on for?
oh, my twin and I reckon that it started before she we were even out of high school, and I'm 28 now. Um,
Okay.
my dad was not on board with the diagnosis for years. My sister and I kind of felt like we were in the twilight zone a lot of the time. Like, are we the only ones seeing this? Like, is there something wrong with our perception?
Wow.
Um, and it, Guild Wars 2, as many games become for people, was an outlet to go to where I could just feel happy and enthusiastic and explore and experience a map and a game that I loved with people that I take my role probably more seriously than a lot of other folks do as guild leader. It's my job to take care of the people who are there. It's their comfort and their safety and their happiness, and that's on me and those I choose in leadership. And I've been on the other end where leadership did not care about that, and it had such a destructive effect on my mental health. And as someone, I was a teenager when a lot of this happened, and it
Right.
just
as are
Teenagers are
many who
very
experience these
impressionable.
things. Right.
Yeah. And it I had repercussions of it for years. And it is literally a nightmare of mine to think that there could ever be an issue where something happens with a guild or community I run where someone just feels so ostracized and hurt over something. So I log in to have fun and sort of feel happy and enthusiastic as much as I log in to make sure that others feel that same way. So it's like a job that I really love.
Yeah, I can hear that. You really treat sand like a home for people who choose to be there, and it matters a
It is
lot to you
definitely,
that people are happy there.
definitely. And I
Yeah.
know I haven't always succeeded. I've
No one
made
gets
mistakes.
100% when it comes to these things. Nobody,
No,
Miranda.
there are jokes made that I'm a robot sometimes, just because I have a ridiculous memory for names, and I have a notebook right here. I haven't written it in a while, but I have pages of individual guild members, and I write little tidbits that they told me about so that I don't forget, and then I'll look at occasionally to refresh my memory. And I will memorize someone's account name so that I can eventually associate all of their alt names with their account name. And
Wow.
I do that not just with sand members, but with people who are on dry top often and frequently. Um, I'm a tangent queen, so just let me know. Like, feel free to just slide me back on track.
No, this is
Um,
great. Like it's clear that this community means a lot to you and everyone in it. And it's really interesting to hear you share because I had a parallel but different experience when I was a teenager too, which came a little earlier because I'm a bit older. And for me, my version of sand was um, a game called Team Fortress Classic, which was a modification for Half-Life 1 shooter game,
mhm.
team based. Also, opportunity for collaboration. So, what did I do? I made my team, decided to make one called a clan. And I really cared a lot about a lot of the stuff you're saying. The way that game was structured was different. It was competitive, so it didn't come out exactly that way. But before very long, all of my experience in Team Fortress Classic was not about being good at the game. It was not about having fun or escaping, but it was about making a good experience and a home for anyone who wanted to be a part of what we were doing. So I completely resonate with what you're talking about.
You and I are kindred spirits.
I think so. And I think
And
it's important.
oh,
Go.
go ahead, go ahead. No, my internet is just being my internet, Wi Fi.
Yeah, technology. What you gonna do? But
Throw
I
your
think that
computer out the window.
and one of the things that I think I'm beginning to realize as I become older and perhaps wiser, perhaps not, it's debatable, is that even the most destructive, awful leaders of communities in games like this, they're all doing it because they love the game. And they're all doing it out of their own time and voluntary resources. And I think people, generally speaking, mean well, and the things they do, they think are for the best. Um, of course, not everyone does it well, and not everyone has the awareness to understand the effect they have on others, especially when you're doing it through a screen instead of in the same room with someone where there's the whole
Yes.
anonymity factor and every other thing, inflection of voice. Um, so, but it's important to have these people, these connectors, and that's kind of what I consider myself to be these days, more of a connector type kind of personality. It's why I'm doing this show that you and I are on. And I think that there is something when it comes to the medium of video games that is not well understood. Um, because unlike other artistic mediums like movies or sculpture or theater, the medium is intrinsically formed individually by each person because of the necessity to get your hands on it. You control it, right?
Hmm. Definitely.
Um, and I think one of the things that one of the ways I like to think about when people say behave poorly on social media, which there are easy examples of everywhere.
YouTube.
Yeah. But what I realize when I see some of these things, when I ask myself, is how could someone do that? Don't they know? Like, how stupid can you be? But the reality is, humans have been around for a long time. The internet's only been around for less than the blink of an eye on the human time span. we haven't yet, as a species, figured out what to do with the internet and how to
Absolute.
be connected all the time with everyone. What a burden this is,
No,
and
I
an
mean,
opportunity.
I'm excited to see the evolution of the internet and its consequences. I mean, we're still going to be feeling them well after I die. And that's fascinating to me. And you're very right about the blink of an eye. I've been, I'm majoring in anthropology. So one of the huge things that we really sort of nail down is, by the way, like, you're a blink of an eye. Like, here's this tiny, tiny, tiny sliver, and that's how long humans have been around.
Right,
Here's this wide, wide expanse of time, and that's when so many other things were occurring when we were not even there. And
right.
it's humbling and it's fascinating, and it's also kind of just like, it makes you smile a bit sometimes. Like, I think it's, you see silly videos and memes and people doing something stupid for laughs, and it's kind of just like, I think it's cute and it's funny that, like, we're a species that just does stupid stuff sometimes. And, learns from their mistakes or doesn't learn from their mistakes. I mean, we're still very much new, very
Yeah,
new.
yeah. We're all struggling for meaning, and
Ah, the existential crisis in us all.
perhaps we're too smart for our own good, or
I
not
mean,
enough.
there's some fascinating things to just go along with whether or not culture is genetic, if there's a genetic component to it, actually, because I'm going to get the terms wrong, but until a certain point in the evolution of our ancestors, tools were very similar. They were all very similar across the board. There was no change at all for, I believe, it maybe a million years, not quite that, but thousands of years. There was no change. And suddenly, bam, there was an explosion of creativity with tools, with how they were utilized, with suddenly there was clearly trade where these different tools were cropping up. And it's like, what caused that? Was it the
Ah,
environment? Something changed? Were we just getting smarter? No, our brain capacity didn't change too much. Was it a genetic component? And that's really a theory that can't be proven for probably many, many, many years. But it's a fascinating theory to consider, what began that huge explosion of culture and change and advancement in our ancestors.
that's fascinating. I had no idea about that.
It blew my mind when I learned it in class last semester.
Wow,
My professor was very honest. He was like, this class gets harder to teach every year, and I was like, you're right about that. Like, there's something new happening every 6 months.
the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
You are getting wiser.
Careful now.
It's true.
So, yeah, it's interesting to hear you share that. So, my basic take on like, the building that I'm sitting in today, which is a multi-level apartment building in a city, is that the reason that I get to sit here and talk to you across metal tubes and enjoy my heat or air conditioning when I need it and sit in my basically custom designed cave just for me is because unlike the cat that I keep as a pet, and I love that cat. She's amazing. Cutest thing ever.
Mine is on my bed
I
watching.
she was here a minute ago. Ah, she's I went to go find her food dish. But unlike her, I'm able to act out of more than pure instinct. I'm able to direct my action intentionally, which I think is what separates us from animals, I think.
Mhm.
Is that an anthropologically sound notion?
I just had a brain freeze. Repeat the last 10 seconds of your question. I'm so sorry. I was there and then it
That's
fell.
okay. I have that effect on people. So,
No, 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 no. I, I was staring at. Please, one more.
not at all. So, it's this sense that I've kind of nurtured over the years that um, oh, that's not a good way of putting it. It's an idea that I have, right or wrong. That the thing that separates us from other creatures on Earth, like the cat that I live with, is my example, is that when I act, it's not out of mere instinct. I'm able to focus my actions with intention and able to consider them both in the future and in the past. And that's why I get to live in an apartment instead of whatever cave I can find out in the wilderness. And
Mhm.
that's why I have complex tools, which is what got me thinking about this, is what you said about the tool use. Um, it's I don't know if that's anthropologically sound, but what you said made me think of it, and it's fascinating to consider what changed to separate us from everything else alive.
Yeah, and I mean, I will be the first to admit, as much as I'm majoring in anthropology, my subfield is neither biological nor archaeological anthropology. So I tend to gravitate more towards the cultural and linguistics of today.
Okay,
But I mean, it's I had something I was gonna say, and it just I wow, it's the second one I've had like in a minute, just
it'll
forgetting
float
what I
up.
was gonna say.
I have a
It'll
question for
float
you.
up like yes, go for it.
Question is, have you been able to find any interesting applications of what you're studying in your leadership of sand?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Oh, do tell.
Sand is actually the reason, at least a huge reason, why I'm majoring in anthropology now. Um, I was sort of one of those, perennial city college kids where I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing with my life, so I'm just going to keep going to city college because it's cheap, I can afford it, and yay, class. Um, and I ended up taking a cultural anthropology class with a stellar professor about 3 years ago now. And it kind of just it blew my mind. I remember in a physical anthropology course with another professor. I'm on a tangent here, aren't I?
Nope, you're good.
The first one of the first things, and I remember from that class, is learning that one of our ancestors of about 3.5, 4 million years ago, they had the capacity for empathy and to care. I
Hmm,
believe it's you can look it up. It's called the Turkana boy. There was evidence of an abscess, I think, of the skeletal remains, and for someone that age of the with the fossils to have survived, it means that there had to have been people taking care of him and helping him. And
interesting.
they found evidence of that, and it's just like I thought that was such a beautiful kind of incredible thing. Like, look at what you have evolved from,
Uh huh.
where at least a couple million years ago there was an ancestor of ours who had the capacity, whereas they could not speak verbally, they had the capacity within their brains and their heart or their soul, if you'd like to say, to love and care and comfort someone who, I mean, an abscess is really painful. So
Yeah.
that blew my mind. I thought it was the greatest thing ever when I learned that, and that was sort of the start. And with anthropology, especially with cultural, a huge part of it is learning about different cultures, different languages, um, learning about humans in various different ways, whether it's the biological, the ancient, the current, or the spoken. And with sand, we have people from different countries, different time zones, different ideologies, politics, religion, sexuality, identity. We've got everyone, and it makes me so proud when I can count on maybe barely one hand the amount of times we've had an issue where someone like was really angry about someone's change in opinion or different opinion, because folks typically know, like, just we're about respect here. You don't have to agree, but you can be respectful and disagree, and that's what I expect.
Right.
And I've had to learn a lot about diplomacy with sand, and to embrace that not everyone experiences or sees the world the same way, that some people speak more bluntly than others, some do not, and that I was considered a difficult person in my former guild. I was the person that the leadership, their butt cheeks would clench up when they saw a message from me. Like, oh no, what does she want this time? That was me. And I kind of reveled in it for a while until I was kind of like, wow, it's really isolating to be hated.
Uh,
um, I didn't want sand to be that place. I wanted it to be a place where there could be second and third chances for people who might be considered, difficult by more typical standards. And anthropology is all about that, about, you know, being able to switch your perception to maybe, I think it's impossible to truly understand what you've not grown up with culturally. Um, but you can understand it from a certain point of view and you can accept that you have your bias, whereas in this particular situation, it would be a Western bias, to understand a different culture, but to understand that and know that's happening and respect it and be able to take a step back and really think about what's going on and why there could be reasons for this. I mean,
Yeah,
anthropology has helped me and sand has helped me with anthropology.
that's really cool. And boy, do we live in an age where respect across different cultures and ways of being and living is needed.
Yes, definitely, especially with the continued, globalization and the trend of connectivity through the internet. It's I don't think humans know what to do when they're connected to so many different cultures, ideas, and possibilities all at once.
Right,
And we're seeing negative and positive effects of that.
right.
And
Yeah, there
it's
was a
just going to
time
continue.
where most humans alive never experienced anything other than the culture of their own tribe.
Their own home. Yeah, I mean, I recall a painter, perhaps it must have been. I think I went to a museum, an art museum, and the one thing I remember from it was we were looking at a painting, and that artist had never been beyond the hills of their home, and that
Huh.
was as far as they ever went in their entire life. Save me, I can't remember who the artist was, but it was a glorious picture of hills.
And did that affect their art, do you think?
That was, yeah, I think the point was that it did. Like they managed to have so many masterpieces and yet they were all sort of simply what that person's imagination could have. They'd never, it was in a time where there was no ability to experience other culture, to know the different kinds of architecture and voices and dance and, flora and fauna that existed elsewhere. So the artwork definitely reflected that.
Makes you feel happy to be alive in 2020, doesn't it? To have that
You
opportunity.
do. And then sometimes I've gotten into that line of thinking before, and I think, well, I when I was younger, I'd be like, oh man, what would I have done without the internet? Like, darn, like how
Uh
boring
huh.
life must have been for people. And then I'm kind of just like, but you cannot grasp at what you don't know. You
Right.
can't miss what you don't know. I mean, I write very heavily in journals. Despite loving technology, I refuse to write out anything written without. I must do it on paper first. I have beautiful pens. I have expensive pens that are like 199 each for one pen. Um, because the act of writing sort of helps stimulate my imagination, my creativity, and my thought process. Sure, my hand is never going to be as quick as my mind, but like that's how it goes. And then I will type it up and edit it only after I have finished writing it all out on paper.
You know, you aren't the only person I know who prefers to journal handwritten instead of, say, typing or dictating. I think that
Yeah.
there's an intrinsic link between the formation of language and the medium you're using, right? Like you think differently when you're typing than when you're writing, I believe.
It's actually, I do want to say it's been proven that the act of writing physically will help your brain remember what you're writing and learning
Right,
better than typing will.
right.
That is I think, a tried and true academic sort of warning where they say, look, you can have your laptop in class, but it's better to take notes.
Just bad news for someone like me whose handwriting is god awful.
I've literally in the margins before, if I'm just like really trying to write quickly, I will like basically do shorthand or a symbol and then like tell myself on the paper what it means so that I can just keep doing it on the rest of the paper and then forget about everything.
Right, right. Yeah, and when you bring up writing too, the other thing that occurs to me is the principle or the notion that that restriction helps inspire creativity, and the act of being forced to channel your thoughts through a pencil or pen onto paper is a restriction.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it forces you to sort of on the spot. You've got to, I understand that not everyone actually has the ability to use their mind's eye, which is like that's an actual shot to my heart. I didn't know that was a thing until fairly recently.
What's the mind's eye?
I mean, it's basically where I mean right now I'm talking to you, I'm looking at my screen, but I also see a field with green and an apple tree and wind and someone with wind blowing in their hair. I see clouds in a sky. I see that with my eyes open.
So like
Um,
visualization?
Visualization, yeah, visualizing
Okay,
thoughts. And
gotcha.
some are born without being able to do that, and that just I that makes me angry. Like, that's not fair. And I do that so much um, when I'm writing, and I must think of different synonyms to create something stronger, more beautiful. I'm not going to say that she said. I'm going to say she stuttered, she screamed, she murmured. I want to find as many different ways to explain something as I possibly can.
Hmm.
And having to write it out helps because when you're typing, it's just like, let's do whatever comes first.
Right, right.
Oh, and the term is aphantasia.
Aphantasia, is that F or PH?
PH.
Condition where one does not possess a functioning mind's eye and cannot voluntarily visualize imagery. First described by Francis Galton in 1880. Largely unstudied. Hmm.
And that makes me mad. I want it to be studied. It just when I was a little girl in like middle school, I would turn on music and I would just spend my favorite time of day was going to bed because I would lie in my bed for hours and have an entire storyline going in my head. I still remember those storylines. I still remember scenes. I still remember things said. Um, it's how I visualize so many things. I'm terrified of writing for my characters half the time. And by half the time, it's more like 95% of the time. I'm terrified to put it on paper because I'm like, it's never going to be as good as it is in my
Right.
head.
You have to
And
collapse
that's
like the waveform
yeah.
of that potential to get it onto paper. I totally
I
get that.
really I really wish I could just like transcribe it like perfectly on paper. Like I wish I could draw. Maybe it would be better then.
Or some kind of mental upload process, right? Just link in like
Yes,
the Matrix.
please. Yes, yes. I don't care what the repercussions are. Please just let that be it.
So you will be part of the 21st century willing cyborg movement then.
Yes. Yeah.
I think I'm with you. Like, if I can have my wallet as a chip in my arm, I think that would be fine.
But then people might like try and steal you. Like
I guess they
you
have to
as a
take my
I
arm.
mean, people
Oh, that's
already
disturbing.
ugh.
Maybe not.
I'm
But
starting to think of like stories of organ stealers, but actually, that's a fun fact. I'm not going to get into that. That is a thing. The black market for organs is a thing, but I do want to say there's an anthropologist trying to study it where I cannot recall for the life of me where it was, but there was a country and specifically an area in the country where people were terrified of going to the doctor because they were told stories that they would go there and the doctors would take their organs and hurt them and kill them. And there was an extensive search, extensive investigation. There was no evidence. It didn't happen, but these were such pervasive fears and rumors and stories that were passed down. And an anthropologist was trying to get to the bottom, why does this persist? Why do these kinds of rumors happen? And what purpose do they serve? And what they discovered was that in part the purpose was that a lot of them felt helpless as it was, that they would go to the doctor and they wouldn't be listened to or they wouldn't have the money, and so why go to the doctor anyway? Now there's a reason for it because the doctors are bad.
sure.
It's humans are fascinating with how they cope and the storytelling and
Right.
yeah.
Right. The
Sorry.
story fits the feeling. That's interesting.
Yeah.
No, you're right. People need stories to unite them and to help describe their own realities. I think that's the reason people tend to uh, unite around certain, say, popular figures. Or think of
Hmm.
politicians or beloved celebrities. I was talking
Absolutely.
with somebody about Keanu Reeves, the phenomenon that is Keanu Reeves on the
Ah,
internet,
yes.
where he is
Hmm.
just the uh, immortal favorite child of everyone
Can do no
who has a
wrong.
social media account, basically. And it's just because he's a well-known guy who's been in some beloved movies, who tends to live humbly and has never done anything especially terrible, and has done a few nice things people know about, and just being that guy, like he's the kind of guy you want to have over when you're moving, the kind of
Hmm.
person you want to go to when you're feeling bad, and
Yes.
people see that thing in their life that they want in that, and they that it there's a communal storytelling, and again, that's also part of the it links back to that phenomenon of connectivity with everything. um, we live in such a new age when it comes to all this stuff. The sheer weight of the stuff that we have no idea about just is just stunning, I think,
Oh, I agree. It's stunning and terrifying.
but
Um,
also inspiring.
it's exciting to think about,
Yeah,
and then it kind of just you realize it it just blows your mind.
yeah.
At least it does for me.
Wow. Well, maybe this is a good point to transition to something a little less heavy. Miranda, actually, would you like to pause for a couple of minutes and we'll come right back?
Oh, that would be lovely. I need water.
Okay. Okay, I'll see you in 5 minutes.
See you in 5 minutes.
Okay. And we're back.
That was a really nice break. Like you were
Yeah.
right. Like it was a good idea.
Yeah, it's good to pace oneself, I think.
Yes.
Gotta remember the people behind the mic are humans too. Sometimes you need to drink some water, sometimes you need to let some water go, in my case.
Yeah. Oh, that was me too.
So, okay. Talking about sand. Sand is a Guild Wars 2 guild. Guild Wars 2 is a game. Guild Wars 2 has been through some rough times lately. We're in the middle of what's called the Icebrood Saga, or that's what ArenaNet
Hmm.
is calling it. And it's been proposed as an alternative to expansions and evolution of the previous Living World formula, which is their episodic release structure. Are you currently up on all the recent Icebrood story stuff? Are you current with the game?
Yes, I'm current with the game.
Okay. I kind of stopped paying attention after the end of the previous season, with the big conclusion with Aurene turning crystal and all that stuff, which was
Hmm.
amazing, by the way.
It was
Uh,
gorgeous.
at the time, I actually recorded some thoughts and made a little video pointing out how this really felt like the end of Guild Wars 2, and it's not clear where to move on from there. I actually went to the Moore Theater back in August last year when they were announcing the next thing. They did the Ice Brood reveal. I remember feeling a little bit underwhelmed, and then now
Hmm.
we've had some new story drops come out. So I haven't played them yet. How do you think they've been?
Um, I mean, the most recent, I don't do great with horror in games. And I feel disappointed with myself because there's some really great horror games out there that I feel like I'm absolutely missing out on story not playing them. So obviously the latest chapter was not like jump out of your seat, run away from the room screaming. Um, but it was creepy. Like they had, the cello and the violin, the music and
Uh-huh.
um there was some really kind of eerie stuff, and I hope this isn't a spoiler for you because it was really cool when I realized it.
Hit
Do
me
you want
with
me
it.
to
It's
just
all
not?
good.
Okay,
Spoiler for
so
everyone. As of which episode is this a spoiler for?
shit. What episode is it?
It's got to be
Someone tell me.
episode
Oh god.
one or zero. Zero was the
Oh,
party episode. One was the
the
icy
pro that
map.
was the prologue, and then the second one was the Ice Brood like saga beginning.
Okay.
I don't remember what it was called. This is so embarrassing.
I think
Okay, we'll
it's
just forget
episode
about
one,
that.
I think.
Yes. So
Okay.
there's that, and you go into Zora Marches, and one of the things you get right off the bat is like there's something wrong, like with people, with the map, with the atmosphere. And as you go around the map, you realize that there's a voice whispering to your character, telling you to sleep, to give up, that they want to kill you, that you must kill them. Um, and you will come across npcs just sitting in the freezing snow, and you talk to them and they're like, I'd like to sleep now. And then you're trying to convince them, no, no, you're gonna freeze out here. No, you're right. I just need to rest for a bit. No, please listen to me. Don't listen to the voice. You're right. I just need a moment. And they die eventually. They get like 50 stacks of frozen and they flip over dead.
Yikes.
um it's freaky. I loved it. I was on that
So if
map
it
for
successfully
hours.
spooked you?
It successfully spooked me. It really did. And they're going to have some really cool horror elements with that. They actually killed off one character pretty quickly. And the way they did the voice acting, they stunted it and made it sound a little strange, like there's something not right here. Turns out it was actually because, the person was already dead when they were talking, and the dragon was just talking through their voice, which is just kind of like, ugh.
More
But it
spook.
happened. And yeah, I really liked it. The meta is, mm, I very rarely feel like AFKing during events because that's not fair to people. But after a few times of that event, it's kind of just like, wow, we've got to like fight ads for like 10 minutes and just fight ads. Woo! And like that's it. Um and
Miranda, can I
then you
pause you
fight a
for one
big trolley
sec?
guy.
I'm having a
Yeah, go
little
for it.
audio issue. I want to tweak it real quick. Just one moment.
Hmm.
Okay. Hopefully that's better.
I mean, it could be my Wi-Fi. I hope not, but
No, it's already better. It's not you. It's on my end.
phew, okay.
But you were saying that the new big zone-wide event for episode 1 has is
It was
encouraging
a
you to
disappointment.
AFK.
Yeah. I don't do it personally, and I do not encourage it. My lovely Sandys, if you're listening, please don't do it. It just at least love tap things every now and then while
Don't
playing on
AFK.
your phone. but but yeah, it was kind of it's not a lot of loot really at the end, and you fight champions afterwards, and it's got a cool mechanic which I was hoping they'd do, and they did it, where you're gonna freeze to death, sort of. You turn into an icicle, like you freeze and you're an ice cube if you get 20 stacks of this. So you have to run to these shrines to heal yourself and protect yourself, or you basically just like get into an icicle and you have to bash yourself out, or someone else has to bash you out. And so I thought that was cool. Like you have to find shelter in this blizzard before you freeze and turn into an ice cube. I love that. I've always liked just ice and snow in general. I'm
Hmm.
weird. Like when I was a kid, we'd play X-Men as kids, and I was Icelon with ice powers. That was me. So I'm all about ice. And I just thought that was so cool. Like, how dramatic can that be for storytelling where like, wouldn't it be incredible if the commander just like some shit goes down and the commander's like lost in this eerie forest where someone is like slowly turning into a cannibal and wants to eat everyone? Also a thing on the map, just saying. Um, and you're just like freezing to death, and the other characters are like, we must save the commander. I personally love it when stories put your main character in a position where they're helpless or they're not invincible. And obviously, that's a really, really fine line to tread in MMOs and games because the person playing wants to be involved and feel like they're a major part of the game.
Yeah.
But
This is an
the
issue
map,
that's arguably plagued Guild Wars
yeah.
2, where they have a broad audience and they don't want to turn anyone off from the game, so they've tuned it so that really anybody can get through the majority of the content.
Mhm.
And it's interesting to hear from you about the the report that folks are AFKing through the meta event. I think I've seen a Reddit post about that. It seems like if you can set up an event so that people can AFK through it, I don't know, like does someone have to actually do something or how does it work? I mean, I don't need to know the mechanics, but I guess the question I'm asking myself is does Guild Wars ask too little of its players?
That's a question I don't know if I could answer myself. I mean, I have thoughts about sort of communities within the game, but that's sort of where I don't know.
Sure.
I've never asked myself that question before. That's
Yeah.
intriguing.
Well, just from my angle, um, it's an issue that's been on my mind for a while because I think part of what has made the episodic release format that ArenaNet's doing less and less compelling over time is just the idea that it doesn't require any agency of mine to really get through. It's just like
Hmm.
turning on a movie and it's over in a reliable amount of time. Um, so, but
That's actually
that's
why I like Dry Top. That's
but dry
the
top
biggest.
adds a social layer to it because you have to
Mhm.
cooperate.
Oh,
Like,
you cut out.
oh, sorry about that.
Me.
So
It's my internet.
I think what differentiates most of the episodic content with Guild Wars, where you're going through a story and instances and there are set piece battles, and the easiness of that bugs me, whereas the easiness of something like Dry Top doesn't, because the point of Dry Top is cooperation, and
Hmm.
it inherently dilutes the individual agency of each person, and that's okay, because you want to have 40 people working together, not one person who masters something. Um, one of the things that I've been paying attention to with Guild Wars is the community perception of it and over time, and just the reality that it's driven so hard. I feel by the necessity to push gem store sales, and sometimes to me it feels like the content that gets made is just the bare minimum of what's needed to get people to log in and buy gem store stuff. And maybe that's cynical. Maybe that's just me playing for 3,000 hours and being done with it. Do you have a thought on that?
Um, I suppose as someone who does not have money really to spend on gems, it does not come center focus for me too often. I have been a little I'm irritated that like when I log in every Tuesday, like the little lion is like, "Hey, by the way, there's something new. I'm not going to stop being highlighted until you click this." That bugs me a lot. I
Yeah,
just like I don't like having things that aren't clickable away and like they just stay there.
right, right.
But I it's not too hard to please me sometimes with certain things. I'm a huge critic for some things. Like I you cannot get me to watch 95% of anime. And I love anime. I just won't watch 95% of it.
Fair enough.
Um but when it comes to games I really love, I kind of, you know, I recognize a shift and a change in feeling. It's just hard for me to really nail down like how to encompass it and discuss it wholly. I don't quite have the words, I suppose. It's that I can't really judge any of my previous actions with the gem store because I've very rarely ever had gems.
Fair enough. One of the things about Guild Wars 2 that's kind of unique is that you can actually accrue the premium gem currency by just playing
Mhm.
the game, right?
That's how
By
I've done it.
right, and I think that you're in good company there. I think a large number of people who play Guild Wars engage with it that way, where they're accruing well so that they can buy the premium gem store stuff. Um, that sense you described of not of knowing when a turning point happens, but not how to describe it. Can you think of any of those turning points you've had with like Guild Wars
I
2 or another game?
can, but they're not necessarily connected with the gem store.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just curious.
I suppose for me, you know, sort of going back to my love and my interest in community, and it's almost embarrassing to talk about it sometimes because folks are like, "Oh, you're so cheesy. Like you can't be genuine." I'm like, "No, but I really am. Like, let's talk about this. Let's have fun. Why are you upset? Like, that's me." Um, and then I can be moody and grouchy and terrible, but you know.
As
So
can we all.
definitely. Humans are so multifaceted. It's frustrating. But I I feel strain and I feel discouraged sometimes. I love Sand, I love Guild Wars 2, and I have endless enthusiasm for Dry Top and our work. It makes me so happy. I so happy when someone comes into the Dry Top map and they're like, I really wasn't having fun on this map, but you guys, I stumbled upon your map and wow, like my mind has been changed. And I'm just like, yes, like wonderful. I hope I see you next time. I'll remember your name so that I remember if you come back. Um, I feel stress and strain because I don't feel that ArenaNet encourages the in-game content creators. You know, we've had scares on the Reddit where a content creator through, you know, a streamer on Twitch or YouTube, they're like, "Well, guys, I'm gonna quit. I'm not doing this anymore," and they go, and it's just kind of a riot on Reddit for a couple days where folks are just, you know, very cynical about, you know, what the implications are, and I get that. But I sort of started wondering, like, gee, like, what happens when guilds that run in-game content disappear? Do people just someday not notice, or do they really think about it the same way that they consider the impact of, you know, YouTube video content creators and streamers? Guild Wars
Yeah.
2 is was over 7 years old now, right?
Yeah, seven and change.
Yeah, and Dry Top is a very sort of a lot of people don't like the map, and it is probably one of the more difficult maps, teamwork wise and organization. And I'm so proud when I hear that like a pug map got like tier 5 out of tier 6. I'm just like, yes, like you've been
That's pretty
taught
great for a
well.
pug.
My acolytes go forward. And that's, you know, part of it is because we're such a consistent presence on that map. You can't help but learn how to do certain things. It's been probably over a year since Guild Wars 2's Twitter has retweeted any of our events.
Hmm.
Um, the first couple years that we were active, I mean, it really felt like a lot of the developers were excited about what we were doing. They're invigorating this map. This is so cool what you guys do. I got to meet a developer. I'm not going to name drop them just because, but I met a developer at one of their events in Seattle 3 years ago, four maybe, somewhere around there. And they were so excited to meet me. Like they did a double take to meet me, and I was just like, wow, like that's what? Like
That's a cool
no,
moment.
it is. And like I was kind of like I needed to sit down, and they were like, "Do you need a chair?" I was like, "No, I need a moment. Like this is really strange for me." And it's not the first time I've had people consider sort of a, wow, you're Moon, you're the crazy dry top lady. I'm like, yep, that's me, 85,000 geodes and change. Sorry, I'm
Are you still
tangenting.
number one on geodes?
Oh, good lord, yes. I'm gonna just go into let's do efficiency real quick and go to stats
The
and
geodes are
go
the main currency you get out of playing dry top. That's the main reason to
yes.
go there for a lot of people. And because you're the leader of a dry top guild, you have the most geodes of anyone in Guild Wars 2, which is
85,157. And I actually have more than that. The website just hasn't updated. And the second highest is 48,820.
oh my god, what are you gonna do when you hit
Yeah.
100K? You gonna celebrate?
I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to like give stuff away. Hopefully, I'll have like money then, and I'll just do like, here, guys, like gem store giveaway, like this, that, like make it rain, like ridiculous stuff.
Yeah,
And
you should
just,
do a big
I'm going
event.
to
That would be
have a
awesome.
I'll probably drink. It's been a while since Sand has seen me tipsy.
Oh yeah, the tipsy dry tops are my favorites.
I was upside down in my chair that first year, and I don't know how I ended up that way. And someone I drunk invited someone to the guild, and they're still in the guild to this day. I don't remember adding them. I'm pretty sure I didn't ask them to go look at the website, but they're in the guild and they have stayed this entire time. Yeah, I went on a tangent there, but that's humans do that. Communication
That's
is messy.
hilarious. Yeah, of
It's
course.
yeah, like I have never topped the first year of our birthday. I've never it's just never gotten to that point again.
Well, maybe for
But
100K we could do something bigger. What do you think?
oh gosh, yeah.
Do you
Although I
think you'll
will
hit it
be
this year?
careful. Yes. Oh god, yes. Oh yes.
I don't have a
I
good sense of how
had
fast that stuff adds up.
I mean, for every 2 hours of dry top with our guild and with organized T6, it's a little over 400 geodes, give or
Uh-huh.
take. And I am literally so obsessed with dry top, I will go out there and run T4 sandstorms, which is the basic main meta event that you're building up to for the first 40 minutes. Um, I will just run those and like answer questions and help with achievements. And sometimes, if I have nothing to do in the game, I will park myself where an event is and just farm the event and watch Netflix because life is so interesting for me.
I totally respect the comfort of getting your grind MMO on your one screen and getting Netflix on your other screen. Like
But I
that's
don't have two screens. I literally tab in and out.
oh
I'm
no.
terrible.
Oh no, we need to hook you up, Miranda.
And then my dad has like a 3 screen setup for his online racing simulator, and I'm just like extremely jealous.
Like a triple widescreen situation?
Triple widescreen, and it
Oh,
helps
that's
as well
cool.
because he's a teacher, so he can have, he does what's called IEPs, individualized education plans. He's got, the the left screen is IEPs, middle screen he's like working on something and typing it out, right screen he's got his email up. It works, man. Like every teacher deserves a setup like that, and so do I. No, I'm just kidding.
You
um
do. You do. Well, you're a teacher and a teacher of dry top.
I guess so. I feel terrible though. It's another thing, blew my mind with my anthropology professor how he incorporated various learning methods because not everyone learns the same, but most teachers only use one type of method. And really, I mean, you can't expect perfection from teachers because it's not possible. No one can have. There's no perfect student either. But he would basically talk it out. He'd write it on the board, and then he'd also just it was fascinating. He'd incorporate like 2 or 3 different learning methods so that he'd try and encompass as many students as possible so they could learn the best way possible. I am guilty of not always doing that with dry top. We've had, I think, two dry top training runs, and we've been going for 4.5 years. Um, I am very much a person. I don't want perfection. If you're in dry top, if you are willing to step up and tag up for an event or help with an event, that's all I want. I'm happy. You have made me happy. Like you're my best friend. Um, so I have literally taught people how to do event circuits 10 minutes before we start. It's very fly by the seat of your pants. And as someone who's anxious myself, I absolutely realize that that is not a great way for someone who's super anxious to learn. And I get so mad at myself for doing that. And yet I still find I just don't quite make the time for the training runs like I should. We have a guide on our website, but I do need to parse through it. And some of
Sure.
it's probably outdated. I am a teacher who needs to do better.
And we can always improve. And being a teacher is tough work. I have a lot of respect for the teachers out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting you say that about getting people involved. I think I've helped out a few times, and but for someone like me who I feel pretty confident when it comes to stepping into those roles, it
Hmm.
like getting 10 minutes of instruction is more than I need for the most part. So I can see why that approach might not work for everybody. And also your point about learning styles is particularly interesting because to me because I too, went through school and thankfully I'm done with it. I'm not a big fan of school as an adult. Actually, I wasn't a fan of it when I was in school either. But
I feel you.
I happen to be very lucky in that the primary mode that my teachers used to teach was one that worked well for me.
Hmm.
Um, I'm a very good learner when it comes to listening. I do very well in lectures. So, and I'm also have a really good short-term memory, so I can cram really effectively. So it worked for me, but I know a lot of people who are smart people, capable adults who just didn't do well in school because the way that they learn wasn't really respected.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things that they're only still just doing more research about it to really understand that you've got to try and be flexible. And so too, the emphasis is really put on the student more these days. I took a class where the entire point was to learn good study habits and learn how to be, an effective college student. And I'm just like, I'm still working on that. But the entire point was the professor said, look, you can't choose your teachers, so you have to adapt yourself to them. And that was what he said. Like that was kind of just the status quo. You must adapt yourself to the teacher.
Yeah.
um and that made sense to me for the longest time. The older I get, I'm more just like, that's not really fair.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and you're right. It's inherently not fair because it means some people who are lucky get better outcomes than those who aren't. I've been out of academia for a while, but I have jumped into corporate America with my job and
Mhm.
run into much the same phenomenon where there's an inherent unfairness in the way that some people are rewarded or not rewarded for their work and their efforts. Um, but the trick that has worked for me is kind of a simultaneous embrace of saying, okay, understand what is valued here. You can think of it as playing the game to some extent. And while also understanding what works for me and how I can shape it towards something that works better for me over the long term. Now, with your job, especially if it's a creative job or a collaborative one, you can have an impact and shape your role and shape your team a little bit. But as a student, it doesn't really work that way, I guess.
You don't have much power as a student.
Yeah, man.
I'm learning that more every day. Although I lucked out this semester, I really have quite cheap textbooks. Like I'm in a class like this will be quick. I'm in a class where it's a beginning film class for doing visual anthropology, as in instead of writing a paper, we're going to create a 5-minute film about our chosen subject.
Cool.
And so it's for beginners, like you don't have to know anything. Pardon me. And he's using a textbook that's from 97. So,
Ouch.
it's a little outdated, but we're lucky. The campus has some really good equipment that he knows really well, the professor.
So it's a
So,
it's a
yeah.
class about making a video that's based on
Hmm.
20-year-old
There's a
technology.
podcasting class on campus too. Like I
Oh,
just learned that. That was the coolest thing. Like, oh my gosh, we're in the 20, yes,
the podcasting class. I should take that class.
seriously. But
That's pretty
yeah,
cool.
and you're learning how to create a film about your subject. He showed us some films, and one of them was about selective mutism. Another was about a woman who rode a motorcycle, and it's sort of about her group within a specific county and that kind of culture. They're just short 5-minute films. Some of them have gone on to make a little bit of money and won awards, but a lot of them haven't. So yeah, I have not. He was very clear. Like, this class will challenge you. If you don't think you can do it, drop now. And I'm just like, oh, you don't pull any punches,
Threw down
do
the
you?
gauntlet
Like,
straight off.
yeah, and it's collaborative, so you've got to get into groups of 3, and everyone has to decide on one subject. And everyone in the room, literally, he went through like all 22 of us, had a different idea for a potential subject, and I was just like, this is going to be hard. Like, somehow we're going to have to organically form teams because that's what he wants us to do. He doesn't want to have to assign our teams. We must form them naturally. And I'm just like, no one's gonna want to let go of their idea. Like, no one. So we'll see.
That's interesting. Have you picked a topic?
I have one. Um, but I don't my professor seemed interested in it, but I don't know how feasible it would be for others to be interested in it. You know, I'm sorry to go back to this. Just being, in part a caretaker for my mom has become, a huge shard of my identity. Sometimes I'm kind of just like, what happens when it's gone? Like, oh my gosh, like shattered, but not really. Um, I want to do, maybe a short film about specifically daughter caretakers, and potentially those who are younger. I have been in many, I've met many people. I'm in a support group, and I am the youngest by far, by about 25, 30 years,
Wow.
which is fine. We all are experiencing roughly the same thing, but with me, I didn't have a great relationship with my mom. Um, for a long time, I was very much the bratty teen. Like, my parents tried to limit my computer use, and they'd hide the mouse like in their room. I'd just wait till they went to bed, and I knew where they hid it, so I'd just sneak into their room while they're sleeping and like pull
I
it
did
out
the
from under their
same
pillow
shit.
while
I
their
totally
head is
relate.
on the pillow. And I just like I wouldn't go to bed. I'd be like up till 4 in the morning doing whatever I pleased. So yeah, not a great teenager. Don't emulate me. But suddenly it was like, oh no, like I'm never going to have that great relationship with my mom anymore. And I have feelings of anger and resentment and guilt that not a lot of the older folks in the group really reflect, because they're in a different place in life, they're in a different place with the people they're taking care of. So my hope, very very tremulous hope, is to be able to do a film on that. And my professor was like, "Oh, it could even be a film about you." And I was like, that'd probably be a little self-centered. Like, you say it, not me." Um, but the problem is that, like, I don't know anyone else my age except my sister. So.
Sure. Yeah, well, that's a heavy topic, and I really get what you're saying about being in a different place in life. Reality is the lens that we see through. We perceive reality through the lens of our experience, and
Hmm.
folks who are taking care of their disabled parents, I'm sure it must be much different for them to come at it from a perspective of I got to know my mother as an adult, or my father as an adult, versus what you're going through, which I can only imagine. Um, I I know one other person who's had a similar experience and who shared it a little bit about it with me, and the the sense of grieving from lost time is it's for real, and it's got to be hard to deal with that. And I don't know what else to say, but I get how I think I have some glimmer of how hard that is. I hope I
No,
do.
and I appreciate it. I think you do. The lost time is probably the right combination of words to get it on. You're on the. And I mean, the support group is great in the sense that, like, they know I'm that younger person. They know I'm going to be angry sometimes. they know that I cuss like a fucking sailor there, and they don't care. It's people from everywhere, probably folks who don't like cussing, and they're okay with it, and we're all going through it, and I'm kind of like their little kid that they take care of. I actually, oh my gosh, one of them they called me and gave me a voicemail. I haven't even listened to it yet. I've been so busy. I'm just, oh, I must do that, but later. But
Yeah.
yeah, lost time is the right word for it, because a lot of people in the group have had years and years, happy years, with their husband or wife or mother or father. And for me, I'm kind of just like, well, damn, like, I guess you really fucked up by being a terrible teenager and struggling with issues like that. And it's like, it's not my fault, and I know it's not. I was a difficult teenager because of mental health issues. My twin we're fraternal, but my twin is a successful drummer in a band. She lives in Seattle. Um,
Cool.
she's
To
a
DM me her
successful.
band's name after this. I'd love to have a
Yes,
listen.
definitely. Um, she's a successful studio and touring drummer. She works very hard. The musician life, don't glamorize it out there. It's hard. She is
For
not
real.
home a lot. She often, really needs to scrape to make ends meet. Um, but I grew up sort of comparing myself to her in the sense that she was always far more popular than I was, which is sort of where the internet came in, where I could be my own self on the internet, and people gravitated towards me here, whereas in real life, everyone gravitated towards my sister. And I love my sister to death. I'm so stupid proud of her. Like, Sand has heard me talk about her so often.
Yep.
Like, I am sure I've linked stuff about them before in videos, but it is hard. I sort of, the best way to describe it is working fast food several years ago, like my first job when I was 20 or 21. And I'm in I'm, hey, how are you? Welcome to such and such. Oh, thank you. Here. I would raise my voice higher because people are nicer to you when you sound younger,
Uh
like,
huh.
for real. Um, oh, hey, I know you. You're Amanda, right? It's Miranda, like my name tag says. Oh yeah, you're Sheridan's twin. Oh shoot, I name dropped her. I'm sorry. She'll be fine.
She's used
You're
to
so,
the limelight.
yeah. You're Sheridan's twin. I'm like, yeah, that's me. And I was always sort of remembered as her twin, Amanda, when my name is Miranda. Um, and that was sort of just, she knew, and it frustrated her and it made her sad. So I never talk about it anymore because I'm much older now. I am my own person, and I am so incredibly proud of her. Like, if I could just like make a living talking about her, I'd do it. Like, I would. But I forgot the original point of this tangent. Oh Lord, I'm
The point
terrible.
was the tangent, I think.
The point
But
was
there
the
are
tangent.
a couple of cool things that you just said that I want to reflect back to.
Let's do that.
The I know I'm the one who's having the brain fart. Um, the thing about having a sibling who's kind of out there in the limelight, like I think it's really cool that she's first off being a musician. It's hard to have a more understandable like public image in Western
Mm-hmm.
society. I think like everyone knows how to interact with a musician. They're out there. So yeah, I can kind of understand why you might feel like for like that your identity would be a reflection of hers to some extent. But it's really cool that the internet has come in, like you said, and provided you an avenue that works for you to explore what's meaningful, which based on everything you've said sounds to me like like connection, like compassion, like understanding and um, kind of the idea of almost like an extended family.
Absolutely. Sand is, I mean, specifically, Sand is basically my second family. I mentioned before how serious I take my role. It's important to me to be delicate with my family and to love them and take care of them, because there are certain emotions I cannot really have. My mom with dementia is very prone. She may not understand why she's feeling something,
Yeah.
but she will have it, and she does not have the capacity to handle that emotion in a healthy manner. If I'm angry and upset, it will stress her out and she's headed towards a tantrum. If I'm happy and giggling, she's going to be happy and giggling. But for me, I struggle to be happy and giggling with her. I can't do it. I don't know why I can't. I suppose I feel disingenuous, but I mean, we hit like the jackpot the other day. The caretaker was like, I discovered that she likes The Voice. So she found a YouTube channel where it's just The Voice, like every single season. My mom loves it. She listens to them singing and she sits there and just so happy and clapping her hands because a lot of the time she thinks she's actually there. Like she doesn't realize it's a TV.
Huh.
Um, so yeah, there's that. Um, and I'm able to be happy and sort of just carefree with Sand, my second family, whereas with my real family, I must be measured. My dad and I are very much we have to work as a unit to take care of my mom. I mean, literally, my dad and I take turns. Like, okay, are you gonna have headphones on right now? Yeah, okay. So I'll go in the living room and if we both have headphones on, we can't hear what my mom is doing. So
So
one
he
of us
must be
has
covering for
to.
you right now.
He is, and he will be doing a race in a few minutes. I don't think he's gonna have his headphones on though, but yeah,
Okay.
I've covered for him where he does competitive races online with colleagues or friends, and my job is to be in full view of my mom because she likes going out the doors sometimes. She doesn't go anywhere as of yet, but she will like open that door and be like, "It's cold today." I'm like, "Yeah, it's winter." So you know, um,
That's a
yeah,
heavy
it
responsibility. I can only
it
imagine.
and has been a safe place for me to be more open about it. I understand that it's such a hard topic for some people, but for me, my mom got worse and things deteriorated with my family because people didn't talk about it at all. And I think it's important to normalize discussing something like that. It's still a huge stigma, especially with older generations, where the belief is that dementia is the ultimate consequence of aging, and it's not. Not everyone gets it. So people are afraid to talk about it because they think that's what it's inevitable.
Right. It's that
So,
storytelling thing where if you talk about it, it
yeah,
becomes real.
exactly. And I want to talk about it. I think you can tell I'm pretty blunt and I can be sarcastic about it, which is sort of a bit of my coping. I with friends, close friends who know me well, I'm like, oh yeah, my I live with my crazy mom. Like I don't mean it disparagingly, like she's crazy and I hate her. I Her brain is literally, disintegrating. She doesn't understand that what she sees on a TV is not in her room with her. So it's important for me to be able to let others. Oh, what am I trying to say? I think it's good to be open about a lot of topics, and therefore, if I am open about it, if I have that, if I let people know it's okay, then they'll feel a little better about doing it, whether it's with Sandy's and our community or with their own family and friends, because we lack so much communication in this day and age. We have so much nuance that we miss and so much fear about opening up. It is terrifying to be vulnerable with people. I know that. Everyone knows that fear. And I think to normalize talking about more difficult subjects within a reasonable context, within reasonable limits, is a good way to go forward.
Wow. Couldn't have put it any better myself.
It took me a
Totally
little bit, but
agree.
I got there.
That's what it's all about. That's a big part of what what you just described is a big part of what drives me to have these conversations. Um, I can't put myself in your shoes, and they are clearly unique shoes with very real issues. For me, growing up with games, I share some of that anecdote you shared about the mouse being hidden from you and going to get it. I have my own version of that anecdote, and um, but I suppose as someone who was kind of a savant at school and just never did poorly ever, no matter what I did,
I envy
and
you. Oh man.
oh, like I'm one of the lucky ones. But here's the thing that happened to me. It swung back hard in college. Won't go into too much detail, but so video games were a child's thing. And if I was to become a well integrated adult, I would get rid of them. I would stop playing them. And basically, any kind of parenting issue that kind of I actually interacted with my parents about past a certain age became about gaming and playing games or sitting at the computer. So
Hmm.
for me, actually, two things happened after high school. One which is I went to college, which is a lot more like the real world than high school, and basically flamed out. Um, Never finished college. It was a slow train wreck for me. And at the same time, I also got involved in that Team Fortress Classic clan I told you about, which became very real. And all these years later, although I'm still paying debt on those degrees I never earned, um, the experiences I have from that time of making that home, making that place, and the reality of those connections and sharing meaning with those people persists with me.
I
So,
absolutely agree. And it sounds like having that during that, that train wreck that you were struggling through was sort of absolutely important in keeping you grounded in a sense, and being able to look back on it not totally with frustration and anger with yourself or any
suppose
number of situations.
I kind of look back on my former selves as kindly as I can because he didn't know as much as I do. You know what I'm saying?
Very true.
And I don't wish any of it could have gone differently because all the things that happened made me the person I am today. I know that's kind of
I
cliche, but there it is.
know it's it's true. I understand that. I don't think sand would exist if I didn't go through sort of, at least for me at the time, who I was then, sort of terrible experiences with my former guilds. I don't know if I would have ever felt the need to jump into Guild Wars 2 and find new people and experience new things. I don't know if sand would exist without that chapter in my life. And that's daunting for me to think about, the what ifs that sort of pop up into your head. And it's helped me make peace with it because I love sand. Like, I'm so grateful to have this beautiful gaming community in my life and have met so many people. I go into any map in Guild Wars 2 and I am so lucky to recognize a name almost every time I'm there. I recognize someone. I may not know them personally, but oh hey, I remember you went to Dry Top, like 6 months ago or something. It just, you feel that connection, even if it's only just for a moment, just for a little tiny blip.
Yeah. And it's the same way in the real world. A
Hmm.
particularly nice cashier, someone you bump into on the street at a
Yes,
bus stop, even someone you
and
run
it,
into every
it
day at
matters.
class.
It totally matters. And I had an experience like that last week. I was driving home from school and there were construction workers out. I think they were working on one of the side lane, one of the lanes, and I was getting to the on ramp for the freeway, and he was right near me because I was on the furthest to the right, so he was just walking right there, and I turned and I smiled at him, and for a moment, like, it was almost a beat, like I wasn't sure, and then he smiled back, and it was like the best, most genuine smile, and I was like, damn, like I hope his day maybe is going to be a little better, and like I got onto that on ramp with a smile on my face, like hoping that someone who's working really hard, construction work is hard, it's dangerous, maybe his day is just like a little bit better to get him through the day where he can think about maybe one happier thing at night instead of stress about waking up, 4 in the morning to go back to a construction job, or, bills or stress with family, what have you. It was like, it had been a while since I'd had a moment like that. And it absolutely happens in real life. And I get you. I know where you're coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a cool little reminder of your humanity. That's really nice.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
We have
Well,
talked about so much. Oh my
we
gosh. Do you
have.
want to
This has
like
been.
broach the subject of Star Wars before, or
I feel like I'd be teasing people if we didn't talk a little bit about Star Wars. I certainly am curious to know what you think about it.
mm, Rise of Skywalker? Yeah.
Yeah, The Rise. So,
So
are we going to do full spoilers or no spoilers? How do you want to
I
handle this?
will go. I won't go full spoilers.
All right.
I've been that poor person who's just like, I can't watch this movie for like the next 2 months. I only got to see it because a friend took me, and I was like, look, I can't pay for it, right? And they were like, I don't care. Like, let's go see the movie. And I was kind of just like, I don't deserve you. I really don't. I don't. I really don't deserve them. And I got to go see it because like he bought the tickets on, Atom, which is a really cool app that I kind of want to
Hmm.
use. Anyway,
Hmm.
and we got to see it. And I got to see it, I think maybe like a week and a half after it came out. And in my situation, it was going to be at least like a month and a half till I could see it otherwise. So the first time I saw it, I actually didn't know what to feel. Like I hadn't even seen the last couple trailers.
Uh,
So I really went in not knowing what to expect. Um, the first time I didn't like it as much as I hoped I would. And then I went to see it a second time and it all sort of fell into place and I feel better about it. I am perhaps in the minority where at least the arc for Luke, it actually makes sense to me that he turned into, this recluse, this hermit who is frustrated and angry with his missteps. I I couldn't even imagine the pressure that Luke must have been under, where he's literally the last, Jedi learning under, Master Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he's just got to build from the ground up. Good
yeah.
luck.
Yeah. The
And
chosen one.
yeah, and to make a mistake even for just a split second and let down his best friend, his sister and like his nephew, like, oh my gosh, I that would break me. That would
Yeah.
break anyone. Um, so I was never upset with what they did with Luke. It made sense to me. Um, and I think it mirrors real life in that reality is not always pretty. And obviously, Star Wars is like, it's a sci fi opera, Western sci fi thing with lasers.
Right.
So not everyone's watching it for that. And I get that. And that's okay. That's valid. But for me, I really enjoy that. I mean, for me, the force it's sort of a cycle of a balance of push and shove, ebb and flow, and so it makes sense to me like that. There's just always going to be this conflict, this never-ending cycle of that, and yeah, like surprise, like your favorite characters didn't end up having the happiest life after a certain point. I My god, like the Star Wars universe is vast as fuck. Like I don't even like
Yeah. It's
I can only
huge.
name a handful of those planets. And to think that an entire empire falls and there's literally thousands of planets that suddenly don't have the iron grip of the empire. They don't have any governments in place. They've existed under this rule for so many years. Like goodness, of course there's conflict. Of course something else rose up. And of course like it didn't a galaxy that vast, it's just man, like I am not surprised that things didn't turn out as happily as
Yeah.
folks wanted it to.
Yeah. Star
What
Wars is a.
did you think?
Uh. Well, I take less of a pluralistic view on when it
Mhm.
comes to Star Wars. I guess I completely respect the wide lens of experience people see the movie through. I try to respect people who just want to see their favorite characters have cool victories and be in cool fights. But for me, the most important thing when it comes to Star Wars is that it tells a story that I feel like it has some meaning or some message to it. Um, and there's a lot that goes into that, paying off on different things and investments and places the story has gone. I feel like I'm one of either a minority or perhaps a silent majority. I don't know. People who basically were okay with Last Jedi, the movie before Rise of
I'm right there
Skywalker.
with you. It was my favorite out of the three. Like
Really? Well, I don't know how it was for you,
I
but for me, what made it enjoyable is that it felt like they were trying to take Star Wars in a different direction.
yes. Yes, yes.
I was
Yes,
like,
yes.
okay, the whole Casino Planet thing, maybe not so good, but
I think the
there's
point I actually oh sorry, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
not at all.
There okay, but there I actually so I'm sure you've heard of the YouTube Cinema Sins, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so there's one that's called Cinema Wins, and it's literally just someone like making videos about everything that they thought was great in movies. And like they have humor too. But he did that for all the Star Wars movies. And he did it for The Last Jedi. I'm going to link it to you after this, but I really enjoy his take on the movie and what he had to say about it. Um, and really, he couldn't say it any better than that person could. But they did try and take it in new directions. And one thing that I recall him saying is, yeah, I mean, I guess you've never seen someone astral project themselves across the galaxy before. You've never seen someone stop a blaster bolt with the Force before, but the Force, why would you want to limit the possibilities of the Force? Isn't it infinitely cooler to just see what our technology allows us to show the Force doing as we go forward? That's me, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's no reason to consider previous works to be a rule book, but there is a certain, realm of what's kind of conceivable or what you can envision as being possible given everything you know previously. Um, for me, I've seen the original trilogy a bunch of times. I've played a bunch of Star Wars games. There was a point in my life where all I read was Star Wars books from the old extended universe, and I when I went through the experience of reading all those books, I kind of let go of the idea that Star Wars is a universe about Jedi. Like there's so much more to Star Wars than that. And um, although Jedi are real pillars of it in many ways, my biggest hope with the new trilogy is that they took the dynamic of the Jedi and the Sith and the good guys versus the bad guys and did something different with it,
Hmm.
added some shades of complexity, um, or and I was super disappointed in Force Awakens when all they could figure out how to do was to say, "Oh, there's a new empire and it's called Order instead of Empire." Believe it. And when the new group of good guys is not actually the government that supposedly formed as a result of the events that happened in the
Mm.
original trilogy, but is some weird splinter group that exists because the government doesn't care about their citizens being killed and their planets being blown up. It's so hard to understand. And I was like, okay, I kind of let go of the idea that that was going to make sense at that movie.
Yeah.
But what I held on to is the dynamic between Rey and my favorite character of any of the new Star Wars stuff. Well, maybe excluding Mandalorian. Um, Kylo Ren, Ben.
Adam
Um,
Driver absolutely killed it. I truly,
yeah, he's rightly accused
especially
of
in Rise
carrying
of
the series.
Skywalker.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't want to spoil that final scene with him that I'm sure you know, just because, like, in case someone hasn't seen the movie, a lot of people didn't like that, but I will just say for anyone who hasn't seen it, I felt it was a very sibling feeling. Just the entire moment is one of elation and oh my gosh and wow, like this happened. I didn't see it being romantic in any way. That was my take on it, and I just yes,
Yeah.
continue.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, big moment there. So what I wanted them to do was something different with the whole light side, dark side force thing, and it was clear that they were going to use Ray and Ren to play that out. And
Mhm.
so my big thing that I hope that they weren't going to do is be like, oh, Ray is Luke 2.0 and Ren is Vader 2.0, and they are going to fight each other, or one's going to reconcile the other. Ray to bring him over to the light side. To me, that sounded so boring. And the whole conceit of the light side versus the dark side, I felt was really well explored in the prequel trilogy, which basically showed the light side to be more of a dogma than
Yes.
being good. I thought that that trilogy did a really good job of showing that off. And the next logical step is to say, well, there must be a framework that's better for for integrating yourself within the force than
Hmm.
good versus bad, light versus dark, peace versus hate, or whatever. And I'm like, this trilogy needs to explore that in order to carry Star Wars forward. That's what I wanted. And
Gray Jedi, Gray Jedi.
right, a gray Jedi is the easiest way I think to show that off. It's just a Jedi who isn't light, isn't dark, and like Mace Windu, right? Like Qui-Gon, arguably, although we don't get to know him very much in the cinema
I
series.
actually read a book series for kids that went over it was Qui-Gon Jinn when Obi-Wan was his Padawan. Obviously that's not canon and it wasn't really particularly well written, but fun stuff.
No doubt. So forced in a new direction, and
Oh
it,
dear, did I disconnect? I did, didn't I?
I hear you. Were you
Oh
saying
wow.
something?
Yeah, my internet just like kind of died for about 15 seconds there, but it's coming back.
Did it do
Come
a
back,
hiccup?
Wi-Fi, come back. Yeah, I've got a red dot. Wow, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Like people
I
must be just like banging their fists like, "Why do you have Wi-Fi? You're a gamer, you know better." I know. Like it just
We're all in different
Okay, it's good.
situations. I
I'm
hear you
back.
just fine, unless you're delayed. So here's the test. I'm gonna say ping. As soon as I say ping, you say pong.
Oh goodness.
Ping.
You were cutting out constantly for Okay, I heard that, but I still have a red bar. This is so embarrassing.
That's all
Maybe
right.
I should.
Tell
Oh,
you what. Let's take another 5 minute pause. See if we can get the connection sorted out, and if we can, we'll come back. Cool.
yes.
Okay. 5 minutes, everyone. Thank you.
Well, that's ridiculous. Right when we.
And we're back.
Hi.
We're once again stable, and we're talking about Star Wars and about taking the Force in a new direction with the newest movie. So the throne room scene in The Last Jedi was the first signal to me that they were actually thinking about doing this, taking the Force in a new direction.
Hmm.
And although there are some questionable choices for the rest of that movie, that kernel is something I hung on to and was looking for in Rise of Skywalker. And they didn't do it. That's the
Oh,
easiest way to say it, is that they didn't go a new direction with it. They didn't. They ended up saying the good is the good, the bad is the bad, and they told a bunch of family redemption stories. Is how I felt, and I really felt cheated out of the
yeah,
story that I think Star Wars needed to tell.
I can feel. I Have you ever seen Star Wars Rebels?
No, but I've heard of it.
Okay, so you might actually enjoy that. It starts off a little kitty, far more than Clone Wars does, but it gets heavy pretty quick.
It's animated, right?
Yes, Filoni is heads it though, so good stuff. Um, Ezra Bridger, the main character, is really taken in a bit of a Jedi situation. I mean, the show ends with him like that. Sure, he grows, but he I really think that at least in that show, they actually oh good lord, I can't remember. I'm no expert on lore, but they did have something shown that I believe yeah, no god, yeah. I can't remember what it's called, but it was an entity, a creature who is literally just sort of an embodiment of the force and it's neither light nor dark. And Kanan Jarrus, another main character, also goes through quite a bit of a journey, learning more about the force, not so much through the lens of a Jedi, but simply a force user, someone who is part of that existence. I think you might enjoy some of it doesn't broach super in depth like I think you'd like, but it was enough to get me really excited for what they could do in the future.
That's cool. Yeah, I've looked at the Clone Wars specifically because I know that it's pretty well perceived, and I know that Dave Filoni, who you mentioned, was involved with it and who is largely responsible for The Mandalorian, um,
Oh gosh.
who's heavily involved in it, which is amazing. But I've always had a hard time facing the animated stuff in Star Wars. For some reason, I don't know, something about it just doesn't super duper appeal to me. But it's definitely on my radar.
I haven't actually seen Resistance yet, the third animated show, mainly because the animation bugged me a bit, but I'm so, I'm such a kid. Like I watched Tangled on Disney Plus the other day and then I discovered that they have an animated show for it and I was like, "What? The story continues." So I started watching a kids show for Tangled, like animated kids show. So that's me, like ugh. Oh, it was the Bendu. Thank you, person. You know who you are. Thank you so much. Bendu. Bendu was a force sensitive entity who resided on the remote planet of Atoll Adelon and claimed to represent the center of the force between the light side and the dark side. They introduced Bendu into Star Wars Rebels, and it was great. I think you'd like that. I really do. I'm excited. Like I hope you watch this now.
We'll have to take that endorsement. Is there a lot of it? Is it many seasons?
Uh, it's four, I believe.
That's not too much.
Yeah, it really isn't, and I mean the music score is incredible. The last 10 minutes of the season finale of season two is kind of just I was crying. It was just like that intense. The
Sure,
beautiful music.
sure.
It just watch it.
Okay, okay. I'll have a peep. Yeah, that the idea of this the non-partisan, God, that's a weird word to use to describe it. The non-partisan part of the force, the center of the force, the gray, the not light, the not dark, the non-dogmatic part of the force, and engaging with that directly. Um, the thing that I've developed a feeling about regarding that, which really starting from Knights of the Old Republic, that game,
Hmm.
is that it's almost like taking a child's perception of reality, good versus bad, and integrating those two notions to actually create a nuanced, practical way of dealing with the world and interacting with people. Because it is necessary to be aggressive and assertive in order to um, be successful in life and with dealing with people, but it's also necessary to be compassionate and to understand what you're facing and to um, neither dogma is a sufficient approach. And although it's, I think, fine to start there, it's iconic. It's arguably easy. I've grown up and I kind of want Star Wars to grow up too. And if you're going to tell Jedi
Yeah.
stories, that's what they got to do.
Yeah, I feel you there for sure. Um,
But maybe Star
as
Wars
we
isn't
grow,
something for
I
isn't for
mean,
that.
they've I think they can do it. I suppose I am far more optimistic about Disney and what they're doing with Star Wars than others are. Um I mean Rebels, to go back to that, they had some dark stuff in Rebels. Um quite so. Clone Wars did as well, and they have a new season coming out that's probably gonna have dark stuff there too. Um I think it's baby steps, but they are making progress towards a new kind of idea about the force because they have to,
Yeah.
they really have to, I would say.
I feel like that's what Marvel's done so well with their stuff. Is they've taken
Hmm.
something that was made for kids and they found a way to grow it up with while still being true to the soul of what it was always about. Can be done,
It really can.
which I think we got to see a little bit of with Mandalorian. Have you seen that?
I have seen it all, and I want to rewatch it. Like, that's how much I loved
Me
it. Like,
too.
it blew my mind. The first episode, I was just like, what? Like, I can't talk. Like, it's so great. Like,
Yeah,
oh
Baby Yoda's a
man,
crowd pleaser.
he really is, and I've been so I my only gripe, and this is really just being nitpicky as someone who role plays, and I write a story for a sage, uh, in the Old Republic era, a healer through the Force, and I'm nitpicky about what they've done. They did it in Rise of Skywalker too with the Force transfer. I'm nitpicky about how quickly like Baby Yoda has healed. Minor spoiler, but not really. Well, spoiler, but very minor.
Well, yeah, that force healing ability has
It
been
was
pretty
so
divisive.
quick. And
Yeah,
I was just like, it shouldn't be that quick. You're literally healing someone through the force. Like,
yeah,
the one thing they got right, at least for me, is that, like, it took a lot out of Baby Yoda. Like, of course it does. Like, you're channeling the force through you to heal someone. Like, of course that's going to take a chunk out of you. I'm just not happy that it was done in, like, the span of, like, you know, 7 seconds. For viewing purposes, I get that it has to, but now it's literally canon that, like, it went that quickly, and I'm just kind of cranky about it.
right. And this is a problem with a huge franchise like Star Wars is now the knowledge of that ability changes your perception of everything else that's happened before or that we've seen before. So you look at past
Mm-hmm.
situations and you're like, well, how come Anakin just didn't use the Force to heal Padme? Like, why did he have to side with Palpatine in order to save her if he could have just force field her, dummy? Like, um, and there's a lot of arguments that I've heard about Rise of Skywalker are about how what they've done there completely cheapens the the Darth Vader story. Um, some of this stuff just happens. I think the Force healing stuff is probably one of those things. It's like, oh, we didn't think of that, um, and it's okay. Like that's kind of a detail, maybe, but sometimes you
I
get the
mean,
sense
we
that the
live to
people
nitpick.
making these stories don't know enough about it, and maybe they should. But as time goes on, the only people who know everything are the fans.
Yeah.
It's almost like you need one person directing the story, like they do with MCU.
Yeah. To keep that vision intact throughout the years.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to say about Star Wars Moon? I mean, Miranda. Sorry, listen to me. I'm used to calling you by
It's
your in-game
okay.
name.
I like being called Moon too. I guess I just my one final thing to say about Star Wars, I absolutely love the Old Republic era. It's not really canon yet, but Revan exists. They did do that.
Didn't they
But
announce that
I
there's a new trilogy or a new TV show coming
yes,
out that's based in that
but
era?
I'm not sure. Like it's kind of wishy-washy and like I'm trying not to get my hopes up, but I'm going to like literally write a letter to Disney and be like, "Hi, how are you? I would really like for you to canonize Muirellthe, the species, so that my character can be a real character in Star Wars. I love the Old Republic era. Part of why I love it so much is because back then there were far less restrictions. It was constantly war. I mean, in the prequels, it's what 1,000 years of peace for the Jedi. So in the Old Republic era, there is so much conflict, and they're pushing the boundaries of the Force on both sides constantly. And because there's so much conflict, rules don't exist the way they do in the prequels for the Jedi.
Right.
It's a much easier era to be a gray Jedi, to be a Force user who doesn't necessarily ascribe to the Jedi or the Sith. It's a time when, like the Muirellthe, the species, they had their own take on the Force. They had their own organization, like the Jedi. I mean, they were typically it was light side because Mirror see through the Force. Therefore, I would I obviously I don't see through the
Are
Force,
they
but
the ones who were on that planet at the end of the first KOTOR game?
maybe they're the ones who
Mirror?
don't have eyes. But I take issue with that because like evolution is messy, but not that messy. Where like they still have brow ridges but no eyes. But yeah,
Eh,
I want Mirror to be real. I need the Older Public to be canonized, and it's going to hurt me to know that things are going to have to change for my characters if they do canonize it.
yeah,
But I also feel like it's such a vast time period. Like to hell with it. I'm just gonna write my.
yeah, yeah.
That's what I have to say.
Well, what you made is real to you, and no one can change that. My great hope is that they don't fuck with KOTOR, but we'll have to see.
We do have to see probably for another couple years.
Yeah. Okay, Miranda, I've had so much fun catching up with you.
This
I
was
think we
really
should,
great, Greg.
I would sure love to do it again sometime.
You cut out one more time.
I would sure love to do it again sometime.
I really would. Like, I absolutely. Like, thank you so much for thinking of me and having me on here. Oh, it's rare that I get to talk this much. Like, whoo! Like, I'm surprised my voice isn't gone.
No, you've been awesome. It's been good.
Thank you for being such an awesome host and conversationalist. You are truly great at this. It takes a special someone to be able to keep someone on track while having tangents.
I appreciate that. It's an evolving craft and something that matters a lot to me. So thank you. And
Definitely.
next time around, we'll see where it's at. Well, I promise
Yeah.
to let you go. So thanks again, and talk soon.
Talk soon. Take care. Thank you.
Take care. See you, Miranda. Bye bye.
Bye, Greg.